Iga Swiatek, Amanda Anisimova, done and dusted in under an hour, 57 minutes, 6-love, 6-love. Iga Swiatek has now won her sixth Grand Slam title. She's 6-0 in Grand Slam finals in total. And yes, Chris, this is a shocking result, perhaps shocking for reasons we were not expecting going into today, given just how ruthless and one-sided the matchup was.
I was always concerned that if Anisimova didn't get off to a good start, it could go a bit pear-shaped. I thought we might be looking more at a 6-2, 6-1, 6-3, 6-1 at worst. It did not cross my mind this could be a double bagel. I just felt like Anisimova has been serving well. She did serve really well the other day. And some of the results that, we've seen from Swiatek, she's been getting better and better. And maybe we should have taken more note of how good she was getting. But it just feels like for Anisimova, she can't help but be disappointed with this being her first Grand Slam final showing.
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard to watch at times from Anisimova. I mean, you talk about her serve. I mean, it's been the bedrock, really, of some of her performances, over the championships, particularly in the semi-final against Sabalenka. But here, it just deserted her. I mean, in that first set alone, she was serving at 33% first serves in. I think she was actually winning more points on her second serve as opposed to her first serve. And when you don't have that weapon firing like Anisimova did, it really did benefit Swiatek. So, yeah, we're going to get into Anisimova's performance in a bit, but let's start with the champion, Iga Swiatek, because I mean, this was just kind of, as I just spoke about, this was ruthless. I mean, it wasn't just ruthless in the final, it was ruthless in the semi-final as well. She has dropped two games across the semi-final and final, 20 consecutive games won, three consecutive bagels. Swiatek is just different gravy when it comes to the real sharp end of Grand Slams.
She is. She's so good. And the Bencic performance, I think we kind of put down slightly to Bencic, maybe not playing her best
Mm.
game, but Bencic came into press and said she was way too good. That was a level above what I'm able to play against right now. And Joel, maybe you feel a bit better about the fact you got to that Bencic match. There were two games
I
conceded.
watched the last game Iga Swiatek conceded at Wimbledon. I guess is something I can. It's a small anecdote I can lay claim to.
Yeah, a bit better than the final, and people do pay more to watch the final. So, as Kim likes to say, Alcaraz is good a value for your money. I'm not sure Iga Swiatek is, but she's so good at it. And I think this is one of the things we always talk about. She's almost so good that she actually makes women's tennis sometimes look bad because her playing so well in these moments doesn't necessarily translate to people thinking, put it at the night session in Roland Garros, give it a huge platform because this was blink and you missed it. But she's so good at controlling her side of the court. She's so good at focusing in major finals. And the serve was so great. I was also really impressed by the return. I mean, she was all over everything. It feels like, on the return, there was no room for Anisimova to breathe at all. No break point chances and all the weaknesses that maybe we thought existed in her game, like that second serve. Well, it didn't seem like it was because she actually won a huge number of points behind her second serve at 63%. So pretty much everything that we've ever thought about her game maybe not working, not the case today. She was on, well, even for Iga, this was an A-star performance.
Yeah, it really was clinical. And, the thing I was most impressed by, she got Amanda Anisimova moving across the baseline from side to side. I think that's where she is at her most vulnerable. And, yeah, she again used some of those angles to help, move Anisimova. So, yeah, all the stats pointing in her direction. I mean, just kind of looking at it, kind of bigger picture, what has it been? I know this has sort of been asked like every single match Swiatek has had at Wimbledon, but kind of looking back on the last couple of weeks, and really since that McNally result in the second round where she did drop a set, but since then it really has been easy street at times for Swiatek. What has fundamentally changed in her game for you on grass this season versus as it, like going out last year to Putintseva? Because she's been on kind of crazy win streaks across the clay season, come into grass, and she's almost looked like Bambi on ice. What was the difference here?
Well, I think it feels like she's actually been building a more all-round game. Maybe that's been something that's been going on in the background because she is a lot more aggressive than she was on the clay. And it feels like that's a very interesting response to what was slightly passive from her at times this clay season. Maybe that's been going on behind the scenes. Joel, you might like this. People are calling him Wimbledon facet
Yes.
after the
Well, it's not
performance they.
just Iga Swiatek. He's, coached to being a champion here. I mean, he's got pedigree with other players as well.
He has indeed. And I just think they must have been really working on the aggression. I mean, she's stepping up
Mm.
the court. It's so much more aggressive. She's hitting so much bigger again. And it is so reminiscent of where she was 3 years ago in terms of absolutely hitting people off the court. And I think we lost a bit of that power at times previously and some of that firepower that she was known for and the free swinging because now she's dangerous everywhere once again. I think probably the biggest change is also in her mentality. I think changing surface allowed her to get the confidence to maybe put the clay season behind her. The worst case scenario happened for her. She did lose her Paris crown. And then since then, she's actually reached two grass finals, which she's, I mean, never done in a season before, and won Wimbledon. So I think it was the perfect time for her to make a change and make a tactical change. And it's already paying off.
Well, let's hear from Iga Swiatek now on her emphatic victory today.
Well, I don't know what's ahead of me, obviously, so hard to say, but for sure it's a lot, especially after a season like with a lot of ups and downs and a lot of expectations from the outside that I didn't really match. Winning Wimbledon, it's something that is just surreal, and I feel like tennis keeps surprising me and I keep surprising myself, and I'm really happy with the whole process, how it looked like, from the first day we stepped on a grass court. And yeah, I feel like we did everything, for it to go in that direction, without expecting it, just working really hard. So it means a lot and it gives me a lot of experience and yeah, I don't even know, I'm just happy.
I mean, it's interesting, Chris, you talked about her all court game because she now has a Grand Slam on each surface: hard court, clay court, and grass court. Do you feel like this tournament is finally the tournament we can sort of shake off that kind of clay, that clay tag that I feel like has followed Swiatek since earlier in her career because she's won, multiple titles at Roland Garros?
I mean, it's probably very similar to Nadal. The celebration was reminiscent of Nadal, and I think actually the way that her career's going is also quite similar. She has a home at Roland Garros, but it doesn't mean that she's not able to vacation at Wimbledon or the US Open like she has done previously. I think she's probably more dangerous now than she was when she won her first Paris crown. I think she's a lot stronger physically. You can see that. So I think after this clay season, you'd have to say she's obviously very good on clay and she has the best record on clay. But potentially that's now where she may look a little bit more vulnerable than some of the other surfaces. But still, she's made the semi-final, even when all of us were giving her a hard time for her form. She hasn't gone out before the semi-finals at Slams this year. So she is very consistent at the big tournaments, no matter what's happening in some of those other smaller tournaments.
And what do you think this means for Swiatek and the rest of the season? Because, there's been a lot of talk from some of the players when we've been in press about how you can't really treat Wimbledon in the context of the rest of the season because it's still relatively short. There's not a lot of tournaments on it. A lot of players don't also practice on it. So I guess for me, there is almost that question of, is this, are these 2 weeks and her performances in Bad Homburg, are they going to translate for the rest of the season, going into the hard court swing and, potentially the US Open as well? What do you think it's going to do for Swiatek, as we sort of progress to the second half of the season?
Well, she actually said herself that the grass and the results at Wimbledon don't really matter. I think we used that clip earlier about the fact that the seeds are going out. I mean, it's 2 weeks, and she said then we move on. So hopefully she takes some things that she learned and some of the performances where she did really well, and she kind of uses that to build a really strong hardcourt season. I don't think there's any reason why she can't. And I also just think the biggest thing she'll take from this is that when everyone counted her out and potentially she didn't think she was going to win the Wimbledon title, she proved everybody wrong. And I love these sorts of stories where players have done that. I think Caroline Wozniacki winning the Australian Open after being a slamless number one to regain the number one ranking. I love it when something comes together and it's not that everyone's piling on someone from a negative perspective. She's actually shown that she's probably even better than people thought she was. And I mean, winning a Wimbledon final, 6-love, 6-love, I think no matter what happens to you, you'll always remember the form that you had and the fact that you didn't have form. Then you suddenly had it. So you know that even if you're in a bad patch,
Mm.
it's not going to hang around for long. And champions, I mean, they always get back to being where they were before.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You talk about the story and sort of being written off, and it has provided, I think, a great narrative for her. And I think we've generally had these great stories with all the ladies singles champions at Grand Slams this season. You know, Madison Keys, finally reaching for that consistency in Australia. Coco Gauff as well. At the French Open. Now Iga Swiatek winning her first
But then
Wimbledon.
poor Sabalenka, her narrative is like never
Yeah.
getting it done, you know? So I think it's interesting that some of the players who are peaking at the slams aren't necessarily peaking at other tournaments. I think a lot of people are actually moving towards trying to play their best at the slams rather than being consistent because that's where you reap the most rewards. But I had to say, what would you be thinking if you were Arina Sabalenka watching this match, knowing that you did lose to Amanda Anisimova?
I I'm not gonna lie, I would feel
Book a
disappointed because
trip to Mykonos?
I think we would have obviously got a lot more competitive match perhaps. In the final, Sabalenka is a lot more experienced in Grand Slam finals, and I think we would have got a real contrast in styles on the court because sadly today it just didn't feel like we ever had a matchup where both players were playing good, great tennis at the same time. And I think if we had got that Sabalenka Swiatek matchup, I think we would have just seen such a clash of styles and personalities on court. And I think it would have been really captivating, even if maybe it wasn't the most dramatic of matches. But Chris, you've asked me about Sabalenka. I wanted to ask you actually about Jessica Pegula, because Jessica Pegula is the only player to have defeated Iga Swiatek on a grass court, this season in the Bad Homburg final. So, I mean, is there anything you can take away from that victory that Pegula has?
I mean, she probably likes to still look at the trophy and think she won something, but I mean, it doesn't really matter because you didn't get the big trophy you're looking for. That is quite funny when you think about it, that Pegula also was the player who lost to Sabalenka, and all the other
Yeah,
Americans did get the win in the final.
yeah.
So I didn't think necessarily Pegula would be coming up in this conversation today. But I mean, when it comes to Anisimova and reaching this final, do you think that based on this performance, she will be able to do it again? Do you think that there is a lot of positives can we take from it? Obviously, a fantastic 2 weeks. It's so hard to back up a big win,
Yeah.
but this feels like the sort of scar tissue that you won't forget in a hurry.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of focus now on how she responds, but certainly I think her game can lead her to another Grand Slam final. And I think you do learn, you learn a lot more from defeats. And no matter how painful this defeat might be, I actually think she'll take so much experience away from it in terms of kind of game management and how she prepares herself. I think going into finals, from her press, it sounded like she was a little bit fatigued with the Sabalenka result. It's no doubt one of the hardest challenges, I think, in women's tennis to go back to back between Sabalenka and Swiatek. They also have quite different game styles, and I think adapting to that maybe is also part of the challenge. So yeah, certainly I think she's got the talent to do that, but she's going to need to, I think, yeah, when she kind of is at peace, I think, with the result and her performance, she's going to need to look back on this, I think, maybe from a mental point of view, and understand how she prepares for these big finals. Because for me today, I think it was quite clear in terms of her game, like if we put the nerves to one side, that she has a really great plan A, but perhaps when that's not working, she doesn't necessarily have a plan B. And even when she was dropping speed on her first serve, maybe to try and get it in and get a little bit more consistency, it wasn't working. So even like an 80% of a plan A wasn't necessarily working for her. So maybe again, sort of trying to find ways to adapt her game in these moments when it's not working is something she'll need to reflect on.
Yeah, for sure. And she did actually talk about those nerves. She talked about, what it's going to take to get over this one and some of the improvements that she's going to make. And we can hear from her now.
I mean, I was nervous, but it wasn't anything out of this world. If anything, I was more excited to go out there and compete. But yeah, I mean, I didn't practice yesterday, and I think that I was just really fatigued, and I could feel it also in my warm up this morning. I mean, I had to take a break after every single rally out there in my warm up. So I think if anything, it's my physicality that I need to work on, and to be able to last 2 weeks in a Grand Slam is definitely something that you need to work a lot on. It's not any easy feat. So yeah, it's just there's a lot of room for improvement, I think, and yeah, if anything, I think it's more experience for me on how to handle nerves, and it's my first slam final, so at least I have that experience now.
Well, she didn't put too much down to nerves. I do think one question this makes me think, how much was this Iga Swiatek just being too good this tournament? Because Bencic is no easy customer
It's true.
either,
Yeah.
and she made a lot of people look very ordinary. Is this a case that Iga was just too good this tournament and she really did just peak? As well as obviously maybe Anisimova, the unforced errors don't lie. There were a lot of them. But do you think it's possible to frame this win in a way that will actually be positive the 2 weeks that she's had, as opposed to focusing on the fact that she didn't really turn up for a Grand Slam final and probably one of the most well, could be very embarrassing for you moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first double bagel in a final since 1988 French Open, Steffi Graf versus Natasha Zvereva. That was 6-5, 6-5, but that was like near half an hour. This was closer to an hour. So got to make a little bit of a distinction there. But yeah, I think with Anisimova, I think she can take great credit from how she's performed over the last couple of weeks, and to be honest, how she's performed over the grass court season. But certainly, I think there is unfinished business, and she will, I think, be motivated with how she maybe wasn't able to execute her game today, because we've seen that, and when it's worked well, it's it's been fantastic to watch and see her go on this journey. But I do think that there is more to be written there, and she's so talented that I think she's going to go away and I think provide a big response.
Yeah, and it is still a Grand Slam final. I think you can look at the way that she's progressing, and like some matches, it doesn't work out for you. She still beat the world number one. She still knows she can play a good game. I'm going to ask you this about Iga because I'm fascinated by this, because we have had no idea what to predict for her in Paris, at Wimbledon, now the US Open coming up quite soon, quite a quick turnaround again. Where do you think, or do you think she can back it up in New York? Do you think, well, and do you think she'll be ranked at number one by the end of the year? Is that possible? I don't know. But also, is she progressing back to her place at the top that she held for so long?
I certainly think that she is on her way back, and she could go higher up the rankings, and I think that will help her in terms of her draw. I think there are more contenders at the US Open, in the sense that I think it sort of helps to be a kind of a flatter hitter like Anisimova or Sabalenka.
Won it before though, hasn't she?
Maybe a Rybakina, but it has worked before. But I think maybe there are a few more kind of contenders you could put together who are maybe a lot more comfortable on a US Open hard court. You bring in the Americans as well. I think it's not going to be as easy as perhaps it was at Wimbledon, where seeds have just been going out left, right, and centre.
I do agree with that. I also think that Iga has almost become the player that used to beat her. The big hitter that she used to really dislike playing. She now actually is very much the big hitter herself. I mean, she was the more aggressive, she hit bigger. And I hope that she translates that now to other surfaces, because I think that's what top players do. I think she could dominate again. I think so much has shifted in her game, and it is so interesting how much it shifted. I think, what will the drop off be? We do know it's hard after a slam to pick it up again. Coco found that too, but she's won slams before.
And there is more time.
There is more time. There is more time. I think she's going to be, within the next year, she'll be back at number one. I really do. And I think we're back in, the Iga phase is back, and watch out next clay swing.
My only question to that is, the one of the reasons Swiatek has performed so well at Wimbledon is that she's gone under the radar really until like the very end of the tournament. And we saw actually during the clay swing, when there was a lot of pressure on her, it was impacting her performance. She was getting bageled, by players at certain points. Do you feel like the pressure is already going to be back on, and the expectation is already going to be back on, in the build up to the US Open and at the US Open, that maybe puts a different lens on and sort of perspective on Swiatek that we didn't necessarily have going into Wimbledon?
I actually think this year has been a huge shift for her. I think actually since that ban that she had, suspension, sorry, from contaminated products that she had from a doping perspective, I think a lot of things have shifted. She no longer has that sort of squeaky clean image. The clay season did fall apart for her in many ways. And now she's kind of just in this really cool space where I think she's stopped being as much of a perfectionist. And I think she's realized that when she is a little bit kinder to herself in some of these areas, great things can happen again. And it doesn't matter if you lose some matches. I think she's got so much more perspective because when you're at the top, when you're having that sort of winning run, it's always going to end at some point. No one really stays at the top forever. Novak Djokovic maybe and a few other players, but you don't have to always be there, and you won't always be. There will be setbacks, and I think she's had a setback and she's responded to it in an incredible way by winning on the surface people thought she was least likely to do well at. So I think that that's the biggest change in her, and I think that's what's going to set her up for a lot more Grand Slam success in the future.
And Chris, just before we go to a break, I just want to mention this ladies' final was played at 4 p.m. That was a change this year. The men's final will also be at 4 p.m. What did you make of that, given the result? We had the men's doubles, which we're talking about after the break. But what did you make of having this 4 p.m. slot for a final on a Saturday?
Thank goodness for men's doubles is probably what I'm going to say there. I wasn't necessarily completely wedded to the idea of having doubles first. I don't think there's a problem with getting people in to watch a final at Wimbledon. I've never seen empty seats in matches. It's a bit strange when you have a match finish and then you've got like an hour to kill. I guess that's where they go and spend all the money. But I mean, unfortunately, this was probably the worst way for it to start from a women's tennis perspective. It really wasn't a spectacle, unfortunately. And especially when there's so much attention on women's tennis and, trying to build it, this probably set it back quite significantly, especially with, a very wide TV audience at Wimbledon. So for those there, I think it's a very positive thing. They got to see more tennis. But I do think when it comes down to sharing the platform a bit more, I'm not sure that's necessarily always great. But I mean, it did save the day today.
Yeah, I definitely think it helped. I think given what has happened, having that first match on and getting actually a complete competitive match, I think has helped. But certainly, I don't know if it can be applied, for example, to the men's final, where with Wimbledon saying to me, with the roof, they've always wanted to keep the roof open and keep this feeling like an outdoor tournament. And all of a sudden, you come in with the men's finals at 4 p.m. where you're really going to be playing, you're really gambling there, I think, with whether the roof comes into play into the match. Certainly with a matchup like Sinner Alcaraz, which we have seen go very, very long, like at Roland Garros. So I do maybe think it could work for best of three, like a ladies' final, just naturally because of time. But maybe for best of five, it's a little bit, as I say, a little bit tricky. Don't
think we're going to have a 6-love final. But if someone does retire as well, you would also be in a situation where you've seen a match of tennis before that happens. So I guess from that perspective, but let's be honest, it's for the US TV audience, and they all had to tune in to watch their player.
At least they got to see their player. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.